Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Now in today's video we're going to be taking a look at a pretty cool little piece of software called Winaero Tweaker. This is, I believe I actually got a comment from somebody actually asking me to take a look at this on video. Basically what it is a tweaking or a customization tool that allows you to customize a plethora of things, you know, in Windows 8, or actually Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10. We are running Windows 10 right here in this virtual machine, and we're going to be taking a look at this program. I'm going to be showing you just how detailed that this is and just how many things that you can actually customize, because there is a lot of stuff. And guys, I am not kidding you when I say that there are a ton of customization options in this program. It is pretty awesome. I'm going to have this link down below if you guys want to go ahead and actually download it for yourself. It is a free piece of software. And they do accept donations as well. The author or the group of people, you know, whoever made this does accept donations. So if you really like it and want to donate to the group of people who made this, they have a way for you to do that. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the program. So this is it right here. This is Winaero Tweaker. And you can see here, just check out this list. I mean, look at all of these options. It is insane how much stuff that you can customize from within here. When you first open the program, it's going to come up with this information. You know, this is like the very first option, which is, I believe, by default selected. And this basically gives you some system information. It lets you know what version that you're running. We are running the latest version here. And it lets you know things like what OS that you're using, what your processor is, how much RAM you have, what your screen resolution is, and your Windows Experience Index score, which was actually removed, I believe, in Windows 8.1. But there is a way to actually check the score, and you see that we're doing it right here. The actual system assessment tool is still in Windows, but it's been removed like from the control panel. You know, where like in Windows Vista and in Windows 7, I think Windows 8 had it too. You were able to go in and view your system or your Windows Experience Index score. Well, you can actually view that, you know, once you run the actual test here, you can view it from within Winaero Tweaker. So we'll go ahead and just let that run in the background as we, you know, talk about some more features in this program. So let's go ahead and start going down this list right here. So the second option under information is a bookmarks tab, where you can basically actually bookmark your most commonly used options within this program to make them easier to access. So that's definitely very nice. Now, the entire program is split up into different categories here. We're not going to take a look at every single thing in this video. That's the other thing, because that would take way too long, and this video would be 5 hours long. But we are going to go through just some of them here and kind of touch on, you know, some of the more interesting ones, or at least the ones that I find worthy of actually showing on video. We're going to start out with Arrow Light right here. This is actually a different, like, hidden theme in Windows. You see that I now have it applied here. Now, everything in the sidebar here is kind of in a very similar layout for each of these options, and some of you guys might actually find this program similar to another program that we took a look at called TweakUI. That was actually an official Microsoft program that basically had the same goal as this program, but it was under Windows XP, and it was giving you a ton of customization options for XP. So Arrow Light is basically a different theme for Windows 10, and it looks pretty nice actually. So this gives you a very easy way to apply that theme. Alt-Tab appearance, I think, is pretty cool, because what you can do is actually change how your Alt-Tab menu looks. So you can see here that you can enable a background transparency. You can even dim the desktop. Let's say that you want the desktop dimmed, you know, 100%. When I press Alt-Tab now, the desktop is going to go completely black, and I'm only going to see this, you know, menu, and of course the actual taskbar down there. You can also hide opened windows. You can enable the classic dialog, which is you actually need to restart, and this is very similar to TweakUI as well. There are some things where when you enable them, you actually have to restart Windows Explorer, and some of them will actually require you to log out entirely of your session and re-log in. So now, this is the old classic non-exciting Alt-Tab menu if you do prefer that. There's options to enable colored title bars, accents, the dark color scheme. You can slow down animations, you can change the inactive title bar color, you can enable the startup sound if you want to, which is again something that you can also do from the regular sound panel. Theme behavior, you can kind of customize. You know, if you want themes to change mouse pointers and desktop icons, you can enable that here, which it is enabled by default, but you can kind of disable it if you want to keep your current mouse pointer and icon set. Advanced appearance settings, you can change things like icons, you can change the spacing of them. For menus, you can adjust the menu height. And what's also cool is you can see how each of these tweaks work in detail. When you click this, it will actually open up a web page where it will show you kind of a tutorial on how to do this yourself. Without Winaero Tweaker. So this right here is a guide of actually going into the Windows registry, adding keys, changing keys, whatever that you have to do to enable this tweak, to basically change the height of your, title or of your menu bars, which is what this, tweak does here, the menu height. So without having to do all of that, I can just change it myself by using this slider in this program and hit apply changes. And this is when we actually have to sign out. But once I sign back in, this tweak will be applied. And then when I go into Notepad, the menus will look like that. So if you want that, you can definitely do it here. You can change the font of the message boxes, the scroll bars. You can change the scroll bar width and like the button size. So if I wanted to make like scroll bars, super wide, I'll go ahead and just kind of sign out for this one because I actually kind of want to see how this looks. All right, so we are back, and as you guys can probably notice, we have changed the size of the scroll bars. So this is another thing that Winaero Tweaker allows you to do. Under the advanced appearance settings, you can change the size of the scroll bar. So I just made it like super wide here, and now like across the entire system, except for in like modern UI applications, like in the start menu, and if we open up like system settings here, all of this stuff, the like scroll bars are still going to be like a normal size. But in File Explorer here, you can see that yeah, it's literally just this gigantic scroll bar. So that is something that you can do in Winaero Tweaker here. So you've got some font settings here. You can change the font for both the status bar and the system. Same with window borders. You can increase the border width if you want to. So we can go ahead and do this. Now under behavior here, this is actually where we get into some of the like under the hood stuff as well that you don't really see. But can definitely have a huge impact on the performance of the system. So we'll start off with ads and unwanted applications. This right here will basically, if you check this box right here, it will disable ads in Windows 10. Now this is one of those things that requires a reboot, but this is going to remove, now I've never seen an ad in the File Explorer, so I don't really know what that's about. I've never seen like an ad show up in the File Explorer. But the big thing here is unwanted applications. You can see it should be down here somewhere. Yeah, stop unwanted apps that Windows installs automatically. This is actually a registry tweak that I always turn on. Like I basically have the path to where you have to go in the Windows registry memorized, but Windows 10 has this annoying thing where occasionally will automatically install applications from the Microsoft Store, like Candy Crush or some game that I would never play on my main computer, and it just automatically installs them to your system. So this tweak basically stops that, and it is definitely very useful to have turned on. You can see here we've also got automatic registry backup. You can enable like an automatic backup of your registry. A lot of these things, like I said, are pretty self-explanatory. Check this timeout at boot. You can see there's a lot of disabling of things like arrow snap and arrow shake, which is what when you shake Windows, everything behind it will minimize. That is like a Windows 7 feature. Another huge thing is disabling Windows updates. Yes, for all the people who don't like Windows 10 automatically doing updates, you can disable that. There is a way to do it. And there's also a pretty cool feature, kind of like a hidden feature that is within Windows. It's not enabled by default, but that is enabling crash on Control plus scroll log. Basically, this is like a hidden, sort of like a debugging feature where you can basically trigger a BSOD or a blue screen of death to happen when you press the key combination Control plus scroll log. If you do that, it will literally cause the system to crash. So yeah, this is kind of a fun one to enable if you guys want to just cause a BSOD to appear on command at any moment. So that's pretty cool. Speaking of BSOD, you can actually disable like that new sad face BSOD that Microsoft introduced with Windows 8. You can actually go back to the old style where it's going to show you in detail what caused the system to crash. So kind of like the pre-Windows 8 BSOD. Another really useful one is disabling the lock screen. You can also disable the blur effect on the sign-in screen. So let's go ahead and just restart the system now and actually have all of these, because I've kind of done like a bunch of changes that we're going to kind of take a look at here. So let's actually restart the system and see all this stuff in action. Alright, so here we are booted back up, and you can see that there is no logon, like basically the lock screen, which is that screen that shows like the time that you have to like press a key or kind of swipe out of the way to actually get to this screen. And this screen normally has a blur effect on the background, and that is gone as well. So that is both of those tweaks in action. When we log in here, you should be able to see, if we go into File Explorer, the menu bars, and yeah, so you can see that like the title bar is gigantic now. All these buttons are huge because we've basically increased the size of that, and the borders as well. So you're going to also see, if we open up like Notepad here, and oh my gosh, look at the run. Oh my gosh. Look at the size of these menus. I mean, this is crazy. But yeah, this just goes to show you this is the kind of stuff that you can do with this program. And honestly, this might be useful for somebody who just wants like larger, you know, close, maximize, and minimize buttons on their window title bars. But so yeah, that is something that you can do with this program, although the scroll bars are just hilarious. How I don't know, that's just funny. It literally takes up like this entire portion of the window here. But let's go back into Winaero Tweaker here. You can also do things like enabling Control-Alt-Delete, which isn't enabled by default on a like home edition of Windows 10. You can display a sign-in message. This right here is typical for an enterprise, kind of like a corporate environment if you're using an enterprise copy of Windows, where when you press Control-Alt-Delete on the login screen before you actually get to the username and password dialog, it will display a system message if the organization has enabled it. So yeah, that is those two tweaks right there, you know, very, very briefly. Moving on to desktop and taskbar. You can have things like having the Action Center always be open. You can enable the battery flyout, which is kind of a new battery, like sort of like a modern UI approach to the old battery meter. You can have that. Obviously, that doesn't really apply to us because we're not on a battery powered system. You can, you know, customize some Cortana settings. You can disable the Action Center, disable live tiles, disable the people bar, which I don't really have open anyway. You can enable the old volume control, which is useful. So if you want to have this volume control as opposed to the more modern one where it kind of flies out and it's kind of a horizontal box as opposed to a vertical one. But if you like this old one, you can enable that. And yes, this is one of those instantaneous features where like as soon as I check this box, it automatically takes effect, and it works the same way if I want to disable it. So let's say I don't want the old volume control, I just uncheck that, and then if I go down here, here is the newer volume control dialog. So pretty cool. Yes, there are a lot of tweaks like that in here that are automatically kind of applied without having to restart your system or log out of your session. Also, this entire section right here pertains to the context menu, and this is pretty cool. There's a lot of stuff you can add to the context menu. You can add this one right here, I think is pretty cool. You can add kill not responding tasks to the desktop like context menu, where now when I right click on the desktop, there is this shortcut to kill tasks that are not responding. So that basically will find any task that is labeled as not responding, which I guess that there was one of them inside of a task manager here, and it will automatically kill them. So that is much easier than, you know, your alternative is instead going into task manager, finding whatever process it is and hitting end process. You can literally just do it from the context menu. You can do the same thing with open bash here. So we can go into here, and now open bash here will actually, I don't have the Ubuntu subsystem installed on top of Windows 10 here, but if I did, it would open up a, you know, Ubuntu terminal or a Linux terminal right from within, or just right from my context menu. And all of these, like personalization, power options, PowerShell as administrator, project display, all of these are exactly the same as what I just showed you. It is very, very useful. And this is a super useful one. Take ownership. This is if you're ever trying to like delete a file, say from like an old Windows installation that you don't use anymore, or that you kind of have like repurposed as a second hard drive. And I know this because I literally did that with when I first built this system here a couple years ago. I had an old Windows installation that I wanted to delete, and I had a bunch of problems trying to delete the files because they were owned by the system user account. They weren't owned by my user account, so the system would not allow me to delete them. And I had to literally go into, you know, the permissions dialog box and mess around with all the settings there. Instead, what I could have done is gotten Winaero Tweaker and just added this take ownership context menu to files and folders. And now when let's say that this folder right here wasn't owned by me, I can right click on it and hit take ownership. And now it's going to open up a little command here. It's going to process all the files for me right there. And now it has taken ownership of this entire folder, which was already owned by me anyway, so it didn't really do anything. But that is how easy it is. And there's just so much stuff. And the same thing with viewing owner. You can view the owner of this file right here. So let's go and view that. Who's the owner of this? Well, it's going to find out. It'll open up a PowerShell command here. And here we go. This is the owner, which is my VM user account, which is what I'm using right now. So yeah, all of these in here work exactly in that same way. So if you want to have like just a gigantic context menu with a million things, you can just enable all of these and have your like context menu take up the entire screen. So you can do that if you want to. Moving on to settings and control panel. This is very useful if you want to add, if you use the older control panel more frequently than the new one. You can kind of add some shortcuts in here to, for example, personalization. Now, the old kind of classic personalization options are not really here anymore. If you go into the appearance and personalization settings, there's not really an option to change your theme or your wallpaper from the old control panel now. Well, what you can do is enable both the modern personalization, which is in the new settings application, or you can enable the classic one if you want to, which is definitely useful if you prefer using that one as opposed to the new modern UI version of the personalization settings. So now if I reopen up control panel and I go into appearance and personalization, you can see right here there's personalization classic and personalization. So personalization will open up the like regular modern UI settings application to the themes section right here. Or if I prefer the classic personalization theme and desktop wallpaper selector, I can go ahead and open that up, and here is that old theme selector where you can go through and change your desktop background, color, sounds, and screensaver just like you would in like Windows 7. So this would be definitely for somebody who is more used to Windows 7, as the support for Windows 7 is ending in like just over a month. When you do eventually upgrade to Windows 10 and you want to kind of still have some of those Windows 7 features, well, this is one of them that you can re-enable using Winaero Tweaker. So definitely very, very useful there. Our next selection, or our next category, is File Explorer. And under the File Explorer section here, you can basically customize how File Explorer looks and behaves. So you can do things like changing icons of certain things, like the libraries icon or the quick access name and the icon of that as well. You can disable jump lists. You can show drive letters, or you can disable drive letters if you want to. Auto completion. You can even hide specific hard drives. This is actually kind of a group policy feature. Let's say you don't want the C drive to show, you can restart Explorer, and now if I go into File Explorer and go into this PC, the C drive will be gone. I can still access it manually by typing in the drive letter into the address bar here, but it will not show up under devices and drives. You can change the navigation pane as well, which is definitely very useful. So this is kind of if you don't want quick access to show, but if you want favorites to show, if you want to get rid of OneDrive, if you don't use OneDrive like myself and you want to get rid of that annoying icon from the side menu, well, you can get rid of that. Next up is the network category, RDP port. That is just basically changing the port that the remote desktop protocol is going to listen on. So if you were already using port 3389 for another application on your system, you can change the port here that the remote desktop protocol will actually listen on. You can also set Ethernet as a metered connection if you wanted to, and you can also reset network data usage, which is that kind of pane in the settings application where you can view all of your network usage history. You can reset that here for if you wanted to. User accounts, there's only 3 options in here. They're all pretty self-explanatory. You can enable or disable the built-in administrator account. You can enable or disable user account control, and enable or disable user account control for the administrator account. So that's, again, pretty self-explanatory. Windows Defender, this is pretty much if you want to enable or disable Windows Defender. That's what you can do from within here, and also kind of change some settings from, if you want like the tray icon to show, you can have that option in here as well. Windows Applications, this is useful for if you want to disable Cortana, which is going to actually need a reboot. for you to actually work. You can change the Edge download folder, and auto update store apps is a pretty useful one as well if you want to disable the like auto update of apps from the Microsoft Store. It is by default set to automatically install those updates, kind of like system updates with Windows Update as a whole. Well, you can just disable that for the store apps right from within Winaero Tweaker here. And this next section is privacy. This is a huge one, and I love this disable telemetry setting where the context is prevent Windows 10 from spying on you. So if you want to disable all of the telemetry features where Microsoft is basically collecting a bunch of data from your system without having to kind of go through and mess with all the settings in both the Registry and the Settings app, you can just disable telemetry and data collection right here, and that is it. That is how simple that it is. We also have some shortcuts right here. This is for if you want to have a shortcut to shut down your system right on your desktop, you can enable that. Let's say that I just want it to be named shutdown and be on the desktop. I can create a shortcut, and now this little shutdown shortcut is going to show up here, and if we go into properties, it's just going to run a shutdown.vbs script that Winaero Tweaker has in its installation folder for us. So definitely very useful. Elevated shortcut, this is basically if you wanted to run an application as an administrator without having to go through user account control, well, you can set that up here, and you can do it for multiple applications and have multiple different shortcuts. So definitely very useful. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these because most of them are pretty self-explanatory. So that is the shortcuts tab. Tools, this is useful for changing the OEM information, which is what shows up in if I press Windows key pause break here. What would show up in the OEM settings, which this is a like retail copy of Windows 10. This isn't even a retail copy, it's the enterprise evaluation. So there's no like OEM settings, but I could add stuff here if I wanted to. This is where you would normally, like on a computer that you buy from like a retail store, like a Dell computer or like an HP or whatever brand, there would usually be a little added column in the system like about screen where it would show things like, oh, if you wanted to say you had like a Dell computer, oh, this is where you can contact Dell, here's their phone number, here's their hours, and here's a link to their online support page. So you can literally kind of customize that yourself and even change the OEM info if you say don't want that in there. Same thing with the registered owner. This is what would show up in WinVer. Let's say I want to change this to Michael and I want the organization to be Team MJD. I can change registration info, and now when I run WinVer, if I can spell correctly, now instead of just saying VM here, it says Michael and my organization. So pretty cool. This is a pretty basic registry tweak that I'm sure a lot of you guys know how to do, because I've done it manually myself before, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have as well. So yeah, that's a brief look at the tools here. And down here at the very bottom, kind of last but not least, is getting classic applications. This is super useful if you don't like the modern UI equivalents of a lot of the old applications that Microsoft got rid of, or so you thought, because a lot of them are still in here. For example, Windows Photo Viewer. If you don't like the modern UI, like whatever it's called, Photos, I think it's just called Photos, you can enable the classic Photo Viewer. And what it will do is it will enable it, and then it will open up the Choose Default Apps pane in Settings. And now if you go to the Photo Viewer, you can change it from the modern UI Photos application to scroll down here, Windows Photo Viewer, which is the classic one. So you can have that set, and it should apply here. There we go. So now our Photo Viewer is going to be the Windows Photo Viewer, and not the new modern UI Photos application. You can do the same thing with the calculator. This is actually, I believe, a separate download from the Winaero website, but you can re-download the classic calculator if you didn't like this one that is in Windows 10 now. If you did not like this one for whatever reason, well, you can get the classic one. It is still available for you to use. Same thing with the classic games from Windows 7. I actually did a dedicated tutorial on this, because Winaero, this is again a separate program that they have, but they have like a shortcut in here. If you want to go ahead and actually download them, they have a whole guide that you can follow. Same thing with classic sticky notes and classic task manager and the desktop gadgets. These are all separate downloads, but you can still get them from Winaero, and they are very useful to have. But overall, guys, that is a very I was about to say brief, but this video is like over an hour long, so I'm going to do a decent amount of editing to this so I can kind of get it down to something that's a little bit more watchable for you guys. But that is a look at Winaero Tweaker here. Just again, a very, very useful and free application that you can download to modify a ton of options in your Windows 10 installation. Guys, if you enjoyed this video and if you want to see more like it, definitely be sure to give this one a thumbs up. Be sure to get subscribed down below and turn on those channel notifications if you haven't already to get notified whenever that I upload a new video, which I do every single week on this channel. And as always, guys, be sure to drop me a comment letting me know your thoughts on this program, if you've ever used it before, if you've ever used any Winaero software before, because I know I have, and I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this, as I always enjoy reading what you guys have to say. And as always, I just want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.